Election Day was this week, so how appropriate that area football teams make their last push for the postseason. Stick around for Varsity 360 right now. Hi there, folks, and welcome once again to Varsity 360's Gridiron Report right here at FLSvarsity.com. My name is Mark Coleman from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network. Very happy you've joined us. We have a great show for you this week and a wonderful panel that has joined me. Guests this week are freelance star, sports reporter, Mr. Taft, Coghill. Taft, good to see you again, buddy. Good
to see you too, Mark.
And we have a special guest, the head coach from North Stafford High School, Coach Joe Mangano. Coach, welcome.
Thank you.
You back for a second season. Happy to have you back.
Glad to be here.
Good, excellent. Well, as always, we say that we tackle the top stories in Fredericksburg area high school football, and the top story this week certainly has to be the situation with Brook Point. They forfeited their game this past week against North Stafford due to an apparent hazing or some sort of physical altercation. Certainly an unfortunate incident, still under investigation. We do understand, as of our taping of this show, this is Tuesday, that Brook Point will be playing their game this week against Massaponax. Coach, I was wondering, could you give us maybe your perspective as a coach on this situation, what you talk to the kids about?
Yeah, I think this type of situation brings awareness to us coaches, and something that looks maybe kind of silly or harmless early on can maybe snowball and escalate. And I think I'm not the only coach in the area that's probably addressing this with the players in terms of behavior, locker room demeanor, anything with regards to touching or bullying or hazing. And again, not knowing the specifics, but I just think we as coaches have to maybe, again, puts us in a situation where we have to look at it and say, hey, look at the situation, maybe learn from it, and how can we maybe look at our situation and make sure that our house is in order and everything's tidy, and hopefully that doesn't impact us down the road.
So a teaching opportunity.
Teaching opportunity, yeah.
Excellent. And it's important to remember that these are high school kids. These are teachers
Exactly.
that are, as well as coaches, trying to instill some good values and teach some good lessons to the kids around the area. So certainly hope that this works out well. We know that it impacted actually North Stafford as well. Yeah. So you guys will have gone 3 weeks
right.
without playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
You were the beneficiary in some regards of the forfeit against Brook Point, but in other regards, it kind of hurt not being able to play.
Yeah, you don't get to play, you don't get to execute your game plan. We weren't notified till Thursday night until about 9 o'clock, so we had to go through a whole week of practice prepping. That was good. We had a good week of practice, but not executing it, was going to hurt us a little bit. But we do get an extra week off, get healthy, and we're at a bye week right now and get ready for the playoffs.
That's right.
When you learned about that on Thursday night, was that a shock, or did you have any inclination that something like that was building up? Or?
It was a shock, no doubt. I mean, it wasn't like even Wednesday or Thursday, there was nothing that even was discussed amongst me or my administration about it. So when I found out at 9 o'clock Thursday night from my athletic director, I was shocked, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, there were some great games that were played around the area this past week. Why don't we jump right into that? A big milestone for an area running back as number 5 Eastern View took on Culpeper. Pretty much a blowout here, 42-21. Big rushing night for Kendrick Cuby. Taft, we've talked about this kid quite a bit. He eclipses the 2,000-yard mark through 9 games. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, we've pretty much run out of superlatives for Mr. QB there, but yeah, eclipsing that 2,000-yard mark was a goal of his coming into the season, and he was able to do that with one of his better efforts of the year, 22 carries, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns, and it was important as well because Eastern View was without their quarterback, Josh Stallings, that game.
That's right. They did get a good, Culpeper that is, got a great performance from Hunter Krim, their quarterback. 25 for 44, 300 yards and 2 touchdowns passing. TJ Johnson was the recipient of 9 of those passes, 149 yards and a TD receiving for Johnson. But Eastern View with just a little bit too much for the Blue Devils there.
Yeah, and Stallings was out with a concussion he had suffered against Liberty the week before, and Zach Talker came in and filled in pretty well for him. But I talked to Coach Hatfield today, Coach Greg Hatfield. He said that he expects to have Josh Stallings back on Friday for their regular season finale against Kettle Run.
Okay, excellent. So Eastern View moves to 8-1 on the year. They are currently 7th in the 4A North. They have clinched a playoff spot. We'll talk about all kinds of playoff pictures later in the show, but lots of different scenarios going on. Even though there's only one game left, all the rider points, who could win, who could lose, it's enough to make your head spin. We'll try to make sense of it for you, though. Stay tuned for later in the show. As we try to sort out the playoff picture. Culpeper, meanwhile, has finished their regular season at 3-7. They're on the bubble in the 3A East, currently 14th. We're recalling that 16 teams make it in, so they're going to be sitting by with their fingers crossed, hoping that they're able to play another game here. Good season nonetheless. I mean, all things told for Culpeper, they've been very competitive. Yeah,
they've been very competitive, and that passing game can give a lot of people trouble. I mean, you look at a guy who could throw for 300 yards in one game, and T.J. Johnson is at least the third receiver that I know of for them that's had a 100-yard game this year, joining Malik Roy and Eli Mark. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Coach, you had a 2,000-yard rusher last year. Pretty nice luxury to have one of those on your team.
It's really nice.
Is that an understatement?
Yeah, understatement. We had ours get in about 13 games. So for him to do it in 9 games, that's pretty impressive.
Yes.
That means he's putting up some serious numbers. That's very impressive.
He's he is a frequent name that we mention around here, absolutely. So congratulations to Eastern View. Meanwhile, a team looking to really improve their playoff chances here. King George, the Foxes, took on Caroline and got a big 40-15 victory. Important victory for them as they fight to earn a playoff bid in that 4A North. They currently are 16th out of the 16 teams after 9 games that would make the playoffs there. Is it Jaquan Monroe, I believe, from Caroline with a big game all around for Taft. Actually, I believe, were you at this game?
No, I wasn't at that game, but I'm a little bit familiar with Jaquan Monroe. He had 43 rushing yards in that game, 76 receiving yards, and a 91-yard kickoff return. And he's been pretty much I don't want to say the lone bright spot, but he's been a bright spot in otherwise a tough season for Caroline. He started out at quarterback, now he switched to receiver, and they're doing some different things with him there. So.
Okay. Good game all around from King George. A number of players got into the mix. A good night actually for their kicker, Chaz Parker. 2 long field goals, 34 and 45 yards, and I believe that he just missed wide a 50-yard field goal.
Yeah, 54 yards. Yeah, I've seen this kid kick great legs.
Yeah, no doubt. So King George, the Foxes move to 4-5 on the season. They've got a very important game against Chancellor coming up this week. As I mentioned, they're currently 16th in the 4A North. They certainly have the talent. They may be on a roll here. It'll be interesting to see.
Very dangerous game against Chancellor because they sometimes they don't play up to their talent level, but they do have 2 wins, and they want to get that 3rd win to send next season. They're a young team, so they want to get some momentum going in the next season. So an upset of King George would certainly get that going for them.
Absolutely. Riverbend hosted Mountain View on Friday. The Wildcats looking to improve their positioning in the 5A North. The Bears mounting a late season rally to try to earn a berth in their 6A South grouping. Riverbend jumps out early in this one. Jordan DeMarco hits Chris Pritchett on a nice deep ball for 56 yards. That sets up Matt Felton for a 6-yard score. He has been nearly unstoppable in the red zone since gaining more playing time in the backfield in this Bear Raid offense. 7-0 on the opening possession for the Bears. A botched punt sets up the Bears in great field position later in the first. DeMarco finds his tight end Joey Johnson for the 18-yard scoring toss. Riverbend stretches its lead to 14-0. On the ensuing kickoff, Lance DeSilva with a strong leg, but Brandon White takes the deep kick. He finds a seam up the right sideline. He'll get 45 yards on this return, sets up View at midfield. Jameel Collison-Coffey converts the good field position into points. 6 yards on the carry, View now trailing this one 14-7. Second quarter now, and Mountain View on the march again. Collison-Coffey takes the handoff. He bounces it outside, 27 yards on the carry. He finished the night with 95 yards and a score. Still trailing 14-7, but the Wildcats defense coming up big. Adam Nassan on a delayed blitz from his linebacker position. He times it nicely for the sack. Mountain View takes over, moves quickly downfield. Elijah Burris hits Sterling Collins in a nice slant move, 6 yards for the score, tying the game at the half at 14. Zach Sims isn't getting many touches in this Bear Raid offense, but he is making the most of the ones he does get. Classic Sims here on the cutback, making defenders miss and picking up 21 yards. Orlando Jones gets some tough yards from there. Behind a nice hole opened by Garrett Weidel, Jones with 110 yards on just 14 carries. And that's where Mr. Automatic steps in. Felton on the 1-yard touchdown run. It was his second of 3 touchdowns on the night and his 3rd consecutive game with 3 rushing touchdowns. The score now 21-14 Riverbend. Burris and the Wildcats claw back. Burris with 28 yards on this carry. He'd finish the night with 91 rushing yards. The Bend defense holds on 4th down, though, stopping Burris on this try up the middle. After a punt, View now with the ball at their 45. Burris connects with Trey Coghill, who makes 2 defenders miss and sprints 55 yards for the quick strike. It's now 28-21 Bears. Mountain View on the roll. Wildcats trying to mount a late comeback on 4th and 10. Burris scrambles, makes 1 defender miss and carries a couple more for 13, converting the 4th down. They would turn it over on downs, however, Riverbend needing to burn some time off the clock. They call on the senior on senior night, and Sims delivers. Zach Sims on the sweep to the left, 40 yards, and the insurance score. Mountain View would make it interesting in the end, but Riverbend wins their 3rd consecutive game. Final in this one is 35-21. Riverbend certainly into the playoff picture thanks to some losses by other teams in the area. They actually have vaulted to number 7 in the 6A South. Recalling that the 6A is broken into Conference 1, Conference 2, Conference 3, Conference 4. Yeah. So in their grouping, they're currently 7th now. Pretty impressive. They had been 9th, so they leapfrog over James River and Varina. Yeah. Pretty impressive game there. Coach, you played this team. This new offense that they're running, or new same offense but new personnel, certainly adds a new dimension, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget football is not necessarily about plays, it's about players. And I think what Coach DeMarco has done is he's obviously gotten the ball in a real good playmaker's hands and is getting him in space, and the kids making plays. And then sometimes you don't need to outthink yourself. Get the ball to your playmaker and let them run, and they're doing that.
It's not that complicated.
He's doing a good job.
Mountain View, meanwhile, 3-6 on the year. They still are in the playoff picture as well. Again, stay tuned. We'll try to describe the entire playoff picture for you a little bit later in the show. Taking a look at some of the top 5 teams that play in the Fredericksburg Freelance Star Power Poll. Number 3, Courtland, took on Chancellor. This game was a little bit close to start off with, but Courtland pulls away 56-24, the final score. Taft, we've said this so many times, I feel like we should start getting some sponsorship money for it. The 3-headed monster for the Cougars at work again.
Yeah, when you had three running backs coming back who all gained 1,000 yards a year before, and they're all back again, you pretty much know what's the story going to be every game. And once again, it was those 3 guys. Victor Green's really coming into his own right now. 11 carries, 207 yards, and a TD. George Cheatham, 9 carries, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Anton Jenkins, who entered the year as the lone senior in the group and kind of the workhorse. He had 20 carries for 130 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Chancellor did have an impressive performance from Mario Wisdom. Their running back, 31 carries, 118 yards, and a touchdown for Wisdom. But yeah, this Courtland offense is pretty impressive. Tough to defend.
Oh yeah, with those type of running backs and that type of offense, and I know Coach Hall, he's going to run the ball and play physical, and that looks just like a Courtland team right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
yeah, I was just going to say, sets up pretty much the game of the year in the former battlefield. When you look at Courtland and James Monroe, it'll be very interesting to see what James Monroe does defensively to try to deal with that type of Russian attack.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see it myself.
Yeah.
Courtland goes to 8-1 on the season. As Taft mentioned, they've got the big game at JM coming up this week. Chancellor falls to 2-7. They've got an important game coming up against King George, however. They certainly, it's interesting the way it's played out, but Chancellor, the key to many teams' postseason fortune runs through Chancellor at this point.
Yeah, they're looking to play spoiler.
Absolutely. And they have been doing that for several weeks, or had the opportunity. Well, we mentioned JM. They are number 4 currently in the FLS Power Poll. They took on Spotsylvania, handled them pretty easily, 42-7. Big passing night for Jay Scroggins.
Yeah, it was a big passing night for him, but you said they handled him easily, but a lot of people were surprised to see JM only up 7-0 after 1 and 14-0 at halftime against Spotsylvania. So you got to give the Knights a little bit of credit for hanging in there for a little while. But Jay Scroggins, 231 yards, 4 touchdowns, and Keyshawn Johnson, 7 catches, 141 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and Vincent Ura, 4 carries for 93 yards and a TD. They look like they're finding that balance offensively. They've been looking
after the concerns about their running game from earlier in the season, I think that they've demonstrated that they can run the ball. Mm-hmm. And when you add that with the passing from Scroggins, and particularly with Keyshawn Johnson, mm-hmm. It makes that offense. If you're not one-dimensional, it makes you much more dangerous. Mm-hmm. How's that for insightful football knowledge?
Yeah, Joe, I guess you saw those guys early in the year. Any thoughts on James?
I love Scroggins. I think he's a winner. I think he's a competitor. I mean, he can run the ball too, throw the ball, but that kid's a winner. I think he leads that team, leads that offense. And the transfer kid, was it Johnson? Yeah. He's a heck of a ball player too. Yeah. And he's a legitimate Division I prospect. So JM has weapons. But JM, they're a bunch of winners, and I was telling their coaches for our game this year, and one thing about JM is when they step on the field, they expect to win, they know how to win, they play in December, and Coach Survey gets those guys going week in, week out. So they're winners, and it's going to be a heck of a game on Friday night for them, Courtland.
Yeah, it'd be a battle of titans right there.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I could be at that game. I'm not going to be able to be at that game, but if I were to pick one, that would be a pretty good one to be at. Number 2 in the power poll, Colonial Forge, took on Stafford. Another game that was not really all that close. Colonial Forge pulling out this one 45-7. Gary Jennings with a pretty nice night.
Yeah, he's developing into that X factor for Colonial Forge. They have a lot of talented athletes, and then when you have a Division I prospect who you can kind of sprinkle in and use, in certain situations offensively. He played a lot of quarterback in this game. It just makes them that much more dangerous.
10 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown rushing the ball. He did pass 16 times, completing 11 of those for 182 yards and 2 more scores. And he also caught one. I don't think it was the same one that he threw, but he had a pass reception and 32 yards on this one. Coach, you have seen Gary Jennings and the Forge team. Is the key to stopping Forge Jennings, or they've got a lot of
no doubt about it. Jennings is a difference maker. In our first game, when we played him, our only game, it was 0-0 until Jennings went the quarterback and went like 70 yards for a touchdown, and he popped the game wide open. He's a really good defensive player too. I mean, he has interceptions, he causes fumbles. He's just a big difference maker. So he's the type of kid that can flip the script on you and do a lot of things, and catching, running, rushing, throwing. He's a heck of a football player, but he's also surrounded by a lot of good talent and a good coaching staff. So they're a tough team to beat. A lot of speed, a lot of athletes and physical football players out there.
Any difference with him at quarterback as opposed to receiver?
Oh yeah, I mean, our defensive coordinator will tell you. I mean, when you have an athletic quarterback that can run and throw, that just brings a whole new dimension to your offense. And so it's hard for defenses to prepare for that, no doubt about it.
So Forge goes to 6-3 on the season. They are currently 3rd in that 6A South Conference 3-4 grouping. Firmly, they have clinched several weeks back. They had clinched a playoff spot. So it's just a matter of who they're going to be playing. It'll be a home game for them. Meanwhile, Stafford falls to 1-8, and they will finish up their season against Mountain View this week. An important game played out on the northern neck between Essex and Washington and Lee, a matchup of 2 1A East teams that are firmly entrenched in their playoff spots, numbers 1 and 4. Essex coming away with the 28-7 victory over W&L. Taft, you were at this game. Tell us what you saw.
Yeah, W&L, they entered the game undefeated, but I mean they suffered a key loss earlier in the year, losing our running back DJ Weldon, and their offense hasn't quite been as explosive as it was at the start of the year when they put up 46 points against King George. So you could slowly see that a loss coming for them, I should say. I mean they struggled with Rappahannock the week before, and then they got out here against Essex, and Essex kind of overwhelmed them from the start.
Coach, though, you have some relatively recent experience about losing to a team in the regular season and then playing them again fairly quickly in the playoffs and having a different outcome. Are you able to do you change your game plan when you have that kind of situation? You clearly you've learned something from having actual game time experience against that team.
I think as a coach, you're better when you lose. I think after you lose, you self-reflect and you look at all the little details and problems and say, all right, we got to clean this up. And I think you're able to look at yourself critically. So down the road, W&L, this could be the best thing to happen to them. In 2011, we played Brook Point in regular season, lost 38-3, and they throttled us. Played them in the regional championship game and beat them. And we learned from a lot of our mistakes. And maybe the next time Essex plays, they'll have a false sense. Who knows? But it could help you down the road. No doubt about it. You can learn from your mistakes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And W&L coach Todd Jones, he has some experience with that back in the old Northern Neck days. They would play JM, lose to him in the regular season, come back, beat him in the playoffs. So I'm sure he's doing some fine tuning right now. And
no doubt.
Getting W&L prepared.
Where do you get insight like that other than Varsity 360? As a coach, you're better when you lose. That's an interesting concept, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a big game too. W&L at Colonial Beach next week. So
yeah, there are several big games around the area. It's going to be a fun time in Fredericksburg area football. Louisa took on Albemarle, meanwhile, in what turned out to be a barn burner. Louisa pulling off the 42-35 victory. This one came down to the final minutes as well. Trey Cherry with a pretty impressive performance yet again for Louisa, the Lions.
Yeah, Trey Cherry, he's the Freelance Star Player of the Week this week. Rushed for 255 yards and a touchdown on 25 carries. Also had a key interception to clinch that win for Louisa, who's 7-2 now, and that was a pretty big win over 5A team for 4A Louisa.
Yeah, pretty impressive turnaround for Louisa. They've really turned this into an impressive season.
Yeah.
They currently are 8th in the 4A North. They have clinched a spot, and it looks like they are almost certainly going to be playing a home playoff game, which is meaningful.
Yeah, that's meaningful for them because they, as many people know, they have probably the best home atmosphere in the area with the Lion and the skydivers and the fireworks and all that stuff. So when you're an outsider coming into that environment, that could be an edge for them in the playoffs.
Yeah. Colonial Beach with a 42-12 victory over Lancaster. Lamar Lucas, another name that we have said quite a bit, 10 carries, 145 yards, and a touchdown rushing. He had some help, though.
Yeah, Andre Turner with 11 carries, 89 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So that's not something you see a lot. It's been Lucas all year. To see Turner give them that extra dimension can make that offense a little bit more explosive as they head into a big game against W&L.
Yeah, Coach, so you've had some injuries to your team, the Wolverines, this year, some key injuries to some skilled players, but has that helped you to develop some depth? You've got an opportunity to evaluate some additional kids in roles that you may not have a chance to otherwise.
I think it has. I think we've been able to put guys in certain places, maybe play some younger guys that normally wouldn't have played. We've been able to kind of juggle people around, and sometimes you find a diamond in the rough there. So down the road, long haul, maybe it has helped us. Maybe short term it's hurt us, but we're constantly looking and trying to shuffle, and we have found a few pieces along the way that look like they can help us down the road.
Good. It's always you try to put that positive spin on things, right? It seems like that's a big part of the coaching profession is sort of being the mental doctor, the psychologist, I guess, to try to make sure that the kids see the positive side, and the other coaches and the fans and the parents as well see the positive side of the situation.
Yeah. And I know we talked earlier about you having three weeks off. With a brain like yours is constantly moving and constantly evolving, is that kind of dangerous in some senses that you might overthink some things in these 3 weeks?
One word, yes. And my assistant coaches will tell you that. I probably have too much downtime right now, and that's not a good thing. Might not be good for me or the team or whoever, but no, it's definitely, my brain's been like a hamster right now.
Well, I promised that we would take a look at the playoff picture, and now's where I pay off on that promise. Let's start in the 6A South. Colonial Forge is firmly in. They are looking at possibly a number 2. They could actually go as high as a number 1. Seems rather unlikely at this point. They could actually go at 3rd as well. They're battling with Thomasdale for those positions. Riverbend currently is number 7. They have some work to do, but it seems unlikely that they will fall as far as 9th. They almost certainly will be in for the 6A South. Good for them. Only the second time in school history Interestingly, there's a very strong scenario possibility where Riverbend and Colonial Forge, who play each other this week, will be 2-7, which means that they'll play each other next week again. So back to back. Coach, you've seen that scenario a couple times as well, yes.
That could be scary. That could be dangerous.
Yeah.
But that could be interesting.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
So interesting final to the regular season and potentially a preview of the postseason in the 6A South. Let's jump down to the 5A North now. Massaponax and North Stafford are firmly in. Mountain View almost certainly has secured their bid. Brook Point is on the bubble right now. It does seem likely that they're going to get in. Remember, Brook Point will be playing Massaponax this week.
It's a good chance they could play Massaponax again next week, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
Meanwhile, in the 5A North, Massaponax and North Stafford have secured their postseason bids. Mountain View seems likely to get in. Brook Point actually does as well. Looking at probably a 15th or 16th seed for Brook Point. They have Massaponax this week. North Stafford ending their season with the bye, the forfeit win from the week before, so you're going 3 weeks without a game. You're looking now at a couple of different scenarios. Potomac is one possibility, Wakefield another.
Potomac, if they win, they could actually leap us and Wakefield with their rider points. If Wakefield wins, they're playing a winless team, so they may not get as many rider points. So there's a possibility Potomac, Wakefield, and maybe even Potomac Falls. So there's 3 possibilities we're looking at right now.
So the rider points, and we won't try to describe it here. It's fairly simple, but it's fairly complex as well. And you can drive yourself pretty crazy, I think, trying to figure out all the scenarios. So this is the second year in a row that you've ended with a bye. You've known that you were in the playoffs. You were telling me that last year you were preparing for certain scenarios, and none of them actually came out.
No. We had 3 different scenarios. None of them worked out last year. The team we played, we had no film on, had no preparation for. So this week we're just kind of doing our bye week, prepping, just generic and not really game planning for our team right now.
Makes sense, I suppose. In the 4A North, we've got 3 teams from the area that have earned their bid already. Courtland, Eastern View, and Louisa have all punched their ticket to the postseason. King George currently at that number 16 position. They've got the big game against Chancellor coming up this week. It actually seems likely that they will make the playoffs based on some rider points. They've got a couple of teams that they need to be rooting for, but they can't really do better than 16th, and that means that they likely have a road trip to Salem, a pretty long road trip to Salem.
Yeah, sounds like fun.
Yeah. Coach, we've talked about that in the past. These long road trips and the way that VHSL is set up now for the postseason. I think they're trying to do better. These long postseason trips, though, can be pretty taxing to the team that has to travel.
Yeah, it could be taxing to you, not just physically and mentally, but financially for your athletic program as well. So remember, when you travel, the school's paying for it, the state's not. So it could be taxing in a lot of different ways, no doubt.
Yeah.
Looking now at the 3A East, James Monroe has earned their spot and could actually be a top spot. They've got a big game coming up against Courtland this week. Meanwhile, Culpeper is almost certainly in. They have finished their season and are sticking around trying to figure out if they're actually going to make it in. That's got to be a sort of a difficult situation. You imagine that they're probably practicing, but they're not sure if they're practicing for a game at this point. So some tense times around Culpeper, I imagine.
Yeah, every practice helps, and if they were able to get that 11th game in, that could always be a launching point for next year as well. But I guess the situation with JM, it looks like the thing that could hurt them in the race for that top spot is the fact that Stafford and Mountain View play each other, 2 of their wins, so both of them can't get victories. But but JM still, at the outside shot at that top spot. So.
Yeah. And finally, in the 1A East, Washington and Lee and Colonial Beach have both earned spots in the postseason. Well, that's going to do it for this week's installment of Varsity's 360. Certainly appreciate the time from my good friend from the Freelance Star, Mr. Taft Coghill. Taft, it's always a pleasure talking football, sports of any kind with you. I appreciate the time.
Same here, Mark.
Also, greatly appreciate the time from Coach Joe Mangano from North Stafford High School, the Wolverines, who will be sitting and waiting to see who they play in the playoffs. Are you going to go watch a football game this weekend?
Yeah, we're going to Potomac, watch Potomac Freedom and check it out, and we'll see.
Excellent. Well, there are some excellent games on the docket for this week, and certainly hope that you're able to go out and catch a football game around the area. And then come back next week, we will be able to tell you who actually has made the playoffs from the area, and we will preview week 1 of the postseason in the VHSL. That'll be on next week's Varsity 360. Meanwhile, for the Virginia Varsity Sports Network and all the great crew, my name is Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching, everyone.